Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Earth Sky Floral?
Okay. Guatsi Haupa, Shayai Lucero, Ese, Gawekame, Akumesada, Krashka Hanue, Tinawashti Sada. Hello, my name is Shayai Lucero. I come from the pueblos of Acoma and Laguna. I am of the Roadrunner clan from my mother, and I am a turkey child for my father. I am the owner and the floral designer for Earth and Sky Floral Designs, and we're located on the Pueblo of Laguna Reservation in the state of New Mexico in the United States of America. I have to say that because sometimes New Mexico is one of the 50 that are missing. And so I always make sure I let people know that we are part of the US. Um, I I was not anticipating to be a floral designer at all.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a physician. My whole goal for education was to be a doctor, and I had some issues with the scholarship that was on that had to be taken care of legally, and so during that time frame, I was doing other things. And when it finally was resolved and I was ready to go back to school, I was pregnant, and I knew at that point that I couldn't raise a child during medical school because I only get a little bit of time with them. You know, my partner, my husband, and I, we only get a little bit of time with them, and I didn't want to miss out on it. So
Yeah.
I did finish my Bachelor of Science degree in biology with a minor in chemistry, and I had all these dreams of working in a lab or working in an environmental field or doing something that was, you know, related to the science and math and the STEM field that I had been studying in.
Yeah.
But then the opportunity came where this floral shop was opening up or for sale, and I was like, well, how hard can this be? So I it was like
Little did you know.
so naive to even think, to even think that. And so in December 2008, I purchased the shop, and it is located here in Laguna. And I was so happy just to be the owner, the marketing, the
Oh,
HR, even the janitor, just doing
yeah,
everything
yeah.
that's business related. I was fine because when I purchased the shop, a floral designer came with the shop, and she had
Ooh.
gone to floral school, and so she had years of experience under her belt, and it was just an added bonus with this whole with the shop. And she and I became really good friends, and so much that like we're like best friends, sisters. So it was
Yeah.
really great to develop that kind of relationship with her. But then she herself got pregnant, and she said, well, she goes, I'm going on maternity leave. And I said, no, you're not. You're coming right back from the hospital and going back into the shop. You only get a couple days off. And
Right.
she, nope, she says, I'm going on maternity leave. And she goes, you're going to have to learn. And so
Well,
it was a crash course in learning about floral design. And then I found out that I liked it and that I was good at it. And
you were bit
so
by
I
the
just kept
bug for
at it.
sure.
Exactly, yes. And she, I would work alongside of her. She would do like a bulk of the big projects, the weddings, the special events, and I would do, the greening. I would do the
Yeah.
cleaning up, that kind of little steps that you have to learn
Yeah.
to actually become like a good floral designer. And so, so I was like her assistant, and eventually, she started moving away from the floral shop because her commitments to her family and to her children started pulling her away, and it became I became the main one to create the designs, and so I always wanted to be an artist. I've come from a family of artists. My grandmother made our traditional Pueblo pottery. She's really famous for it. Her pot was actually chosen by the Obamas to reside in the White House during their tenure And so her pot sat
Wow.
alongside another Pueblo woman's pot in the Oval Office.
Wow.
So, so there's a legacy of artistry in my family,
Oh
but
my gosh.
I was never a potter. My grandma was even honest with me and told me one time, she goes, in our language, she says, granddaughter, you're never going to be a potter. She knew that
Oh.
I just didn't have the gift.
Yeah.
So finally, through floristry, I was able to find that kind of artistry, and it's 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 like gone off on its own tangent from there, and
Yeah.
I really do enjoy it. Um, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you said being about, being in the healthcare industry, and you thought, you were going to go to college for medical and whatnot, but you're actually certified in traditional Mexican healing, right?
Yes, I
So did
actually,
that come before or after?
that was before.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I've been studying our traditional medicinal plants since I was 13 years old,
Okay.
and just we incorporate a lot of those medicinal plants in our everyday life,
Yeah.
in teas, in the way in how we prepare our food, and so for us it's just a way of life. But then to get into the in-depth study of how to treat a client, how to talk to a client, that came later. And then in 2005, my mother and I took a course on traditional Mexican healing, and it was a joint certification between UNM and two universities in Mexico, where we studied from the curanderas, and actual physicians and doctors, and it's just this really beautiful integrated course, of the traditional healing with the regular, conventional medicine, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. And it was into this course where we learned all those different concepts, and it was an intense year, but earned the certification. And so through the years, I've been able to combine both, what I know through the medicinal plants of my people, as well as with the Mexican, knowledge, and then just incorporate it into just this very different, I guess, path of healing. So
That's fascinating. Oh my gosh. What would you say? I'm sure, my gosh, that your culture is so amazing and rich in colors and just amazing. But what do you get inspired from? What inspires you?
in terms of floristry,
Sure.
I when I first started, when Ladine, it was the floral designer, when she started teaching me, she was learning from the basic tenets of floristry. In terms of line, in terms of
Yeah.
composition, colors, you use these flowers with this flower, just your basic tenets. This
Yeah.
is what you have to you follow. Um, but then when we started working and incorporating all these other flowers, we just decided, well, we're just going to incorporate everything together, because nature is like that.
Yeah,
When
it
you go
sure
in
is.
forest, you're going to see everything kind of mixed up together. And so we started. She and I would start, combining that. But then when I started, I kept going back to my cultural teachings.
Mm,
um, in floristry, you work with numbers of 3, 6, 9, a lot of odd numbers. In Pueblo culture, in my culture, we use fours. We use even numbers: 4,
okay.
6, 8, 12.
Yeah.
And so whenever I do any kind of floral design, even if it's for like competition, or I use a lot of those traditional teachings. and
That's
and it's
interesting.
really hard for the floral industry to kind of switch off that, and kind of think outside the box
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit. And so it's been a really interesting thing to try to incorporate some of the traditional teachings into
Mhm.
how I think. I mean, because that's in me. That's innate.
Yeah.
Um, and So I get inspired a lot by my own cultural teachings. I also really try to look at if, like when it comes to sympathy. Um, I take what we learned in traditional Mexican healing, in which you have a plática, which is a heart-to-heart talk with your client, and you learn about your client and
Yeah.
what their struggles, because in medicine you kind of look at the person on a whole, not just their symptoms.
Yeah.
So when I get to a sympathy piece, I use that concept of plática when I'm talking to the person who's ordering, especially if it's for a loved one.
Yeah.
And so I'll ask them, what was the life of this person? Did they have any favorite colors, favorite flowers, even a favorite football team? Because our Native Americans really are big football fans or baseball fans or basketball fans. And so we get a lot of, can you incorporate like Dallas Cowboy colors into,
Yeah.
into a floral piece? And, so, I really try to look at the person who's passed on. And what's been really great about it is that more and more Native Americans, we look at a lot of these flowers and these things from nature. They're not just objects. They had a life. They were cut. They're from our mother. And so what our my Native American clients have come to realize is that, okay, they finally found a florist who they can go to and say, talk to their loved one and not think they're crazy. Because I've
Yeah.
had a lot of clients who say, oh, I've gone to another florist before and they think I'm crazy when I ask, can you
Oh,
incorporate this? And so it's really, I love that they have me,
yeah. It's
available
so
to,
special.
yes, and so that we
Wow.
can connect over the loved one. And so when I'm creating my designs, I will actually talk to my flowers and I'll tell them, okay, you're going to be part of this sympathy piece, you're going to be part of a wreath. And then I'll say, the person that you're honoring is from this tribe and they believed in this, or
Wow.
so, just do, I mean, and my family no longer thinks I'm crazy when they hear me talking to the flowers. And so, but I talk to them all the
Wow.
time. Yeah.
That's so honorable. And gosh, your passion just is incredible. I mean, I know, florists and floral designers in general, we're creative people and we are super passionate. But oh gosh, I just love that about you. Oh my goodness. What do you think um, maybe was your biggest hurdle, or maybe still is?
It still is. As a Native American or Indigenous florist, I'm the less than 1% in the
Yeah.
floral industry. And so it's always being prepared to walk into spaces where you're the only one, and
Yeah.
being prepared to be asked questions about your tribe, about what your thoughts, your education, everything. um and I mean, I represent two of 576 tribes in North America,
Wow.
so, or in the United States. So I know what I know from my tribe. I don't know everybody else's. I
Sure.
know generally by region, or just learning and being educated and traveling about other tribes, but I'm not an expert in them. So I really use, when I do some education about Indigenous culture, it's really more of a generalized thing, instead of being real specific to whatever tribe.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my hurdle now, is trying to educate the floral industry about Indigenous culture.
Yeah.
um, I want to do um, I keep talking about it, and I keep telling like my other floral friends, like, um, a potential customer had emailed me one time and said um, that they wanted me to find them a teepee. And I said, well, you know, what tribe are you? Because I mean, though I'm Native American, my people didn't use teepees. And she goes, well, I want to get married in it. And I said, well, are you from a tribe? Because there's a lot of teachings that go with the teepee.
Yeah.
And she says, no, she says, I just think it's really cool and I want you to decorate flowers with it. And I told her no, and I couldn't do that because I didn't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
And so I've had another potential client who saw a macrame teepee and asked me to decorate it the same way. And I had to explain and say no. So I'm really wanting to, and I probably should do it by now, is create a blog, and I want to title it, No, I won't put flowers on your macrame teepee, you know, and then just kind of teach people about
Yeah.
why that shouldn't be done, you know.
Yeah.
And
Do you find that offensive?
I do.
Yeah.
And you know, things like dream catchers, you know, just the use of just different floral products to without learning about the cultural significance is troublesome, is very troublesome. And again, it goes with those stereotypes of Native Americans, and I'm all about working to dispel stereotypes of Native Americans. And so
well, this is interesting, and I think that maybe you should write that blog.
yeah, yes,
because I think we could all learn from it, for real.
It's not to offend anybody, but my whole goal is to really try to educate people about us. And I thank you for, you know, for allowing me to introduce myself in my native tongue, which is Karis, because that's how we introduce ourselves to people.
Well, it's beautiful.
There's been a couple of times where I've entered spaces where I've gotten weird looks or you know, just because it's different. It's different, and a lot of times being different can make you uncomfortable. But I walk in this industry every day in an uncomfortable position sometimes, but I still do it because my passion for floristry is there.
Well, how do you think we fix it?
I think just listening and educating each other, and if you're told, you know, you might not want to do that, don't get offended. And I've tried talking to some florists and, you know, saying, you know, you might want to lay back, you know, or fall back or not even do that, and they've gotten offended, they've got really defensive, and that's not my point. I want to educate you that, you know, we're beyond a stereotype. Native Americans are beyond a stereotype. You know, we're educated, we're entrepreneurs, we even have an astronaut, we're scientists, we're mathematicians, we've got people working on the COVID vaccine. I mean, we're doing all kinds of things. We're just not, you know, feathers and beads. You know, and even I today debated about like what I was going to wear to this video, because I had put on social media, do I wear my Indigenous goddess t-shirt, or do I go deck out and, you know, and put my traditional regalia on? And I was like, so, you know, even I had difficulty trying to figure out how I was going to present myself. So
well, I would have accepted you anyway. And I have. So
I wore my turquoise and my silver, and
I know, I can see. Let me see your ring.
My ring.
That is gorgeous. That is gorgeous.
One of my
wow.
One of my pageant sisters, because I'm actually a former Miss Indian World, but one of my former Miss Indian World sisters, she was running for another pageant and she had a raffle, and so I bought one ticket, a $5 ticket, and when I won the ring.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. Except it's missing a couple of stones, so, but you know, whatever.
Maybe you can replace them. Well, you're highly decorated. I mean, I've looked through your website and searched, you know, different things, and I know that you were commissioned to create the Native Warriors wreath to commemorate the National American Indian Heritage Month. Tell me
Yeah.
about that, because that's got to be
Isn't that
pretty.
crazy? Yeah.
You must be so proud. That's
It's
awesome.
well, last year,
Yeah,
it was around,
2019,
yeah, it
right?
was around, yes, it
Yeah.
was around August, late August, early September, I believe it was. I was having lunch with my parents and my brother, and we had just got done eating, and I turned my cell phone back on because we have this rule of no cell phones while
Yeah.
we're eating, and so I turned it back on, and the notifications went on, and there was the email, and I looked at it, and it said from the FBI, and I'm like, oh my god, what did I say? I was like what
That
if
must
I
have
said, and
been
I'm
so
like going
scary.
through my, like, did I write something offensive? I mean, I was going through social media trying to think, what have I said that's, and so I clicked on it
Oh my
really
gosh.
hesitantly, and it was the request to submit a sketch for the wreath. And I read the email, and I started crying, and my parents like, what's going on? So I handed them the phone, and they read it. Soon my brother read it, and the four of us were crying because it was just a huge honor.
Yeah.
And especially
Amazing.
for the veterans, and to
Yeah.
be laid at such a beautiful solemn place. And so I submitted my sketch, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not an artist by any means, but I submitted a sketch, and it kind of had a general idea. So what I did was I envisioned I could have done a wreath, a regular sympathy wreath, um,
Okay.
with daisies or roses, or kind of a typical or red, white, and blue wreath. But I decided, well, I'm going to create a wreath that honored all the veterans from all the tribes in the United States. So I broke my wreath up into four quadrants.
Oh,
The when you look straight onto the wreath, the upper right quadrant is for the northeast coast, and so there's pines, different evergreens, different kind of pine needles,
wow.
and different cones. Because all pine trees, their cones are all different.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
used like three type of cones mixed in, and then I added cranberries because cranberry was a food source of the indigenous people of that area. So I added those in there. The bottom lower right quadrant was for the southeast people. It's covered with magnolia leaves. There's straw flower. There's thistle, and then there's these long pine needles that came from North Carolina. One of the women that worked that works for the FBI, she asked her grandma if she could forage some of the pine needles from their family's plots. And so grandma was foraging pine needles
Oh my
and sent
God.
them to her up in Washington D.C. And then when when they went to when I went to meet them, she handed me the bag of the pine needles that grandma had foraged. So those pine needles are also stuck in
Wow.
or placed, not stuck,
Yeah.
placed in that quadrant. Um, the lower left quadrant is for the Southwest or the desert people, and I created corn husk flowers. And one really cool thing was I was making corn husk flowers one time, and my mom happened to come and see me. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm making corn husk flowers." And she said, "Your grandma used to make those." And she said, when I was in preschool, and I was a little girl, she said I was about 5. She said I asked your grandma to make me some so I could give to my teacher. So I was like, so that gave me chills because there was that finally artistic connection to my grandma. And so I made corn husk flowers, and in the middle was um, a red, like it was a red bead, but it was to represent um, the medicinal plants. Like when a lot of our medicinal plants are ready, they turn red. So it was like
Yeah.
chokecherry, the mountain mahogany berries, just a lot of berries. And
Mhm.
so that was in the middle of each corn husk flower. And then it was wrapped also in corn husk, And then corn, different ornamental corn in all different colors, red, white, blue, because our people grew corn in all these different colors. And then my brother, he had actually grown corn, and he had this little itty bitty corn cob that he was going to save. And he's, I'll just save it because it didn't mature fully. He's, I'll save it and give it, use it as seeds for the following year. But when he saw me incorporating the corn, he comes running. He says, "Can you put this on your wreath?" He says, "This is my gift to the veterans."
Oh
So he took his corn cob, and we placed it on. I placed it on that wreath. And then the upper left quadrant is for the Northwest coast and the Alaskan people. I had people sent me moss from that they gathered from Alaska, sticks from the Oregon coast. There's some rocks also from the Seattle coast. And then I put little mushrooms, and I really wanted to use fireweed, which is in Alaska. But when I was doing my call out for flowers, their growing season had just stopped. And so I had to substitute another flower for it. And then if you look on the picture, there's also a piece of walrus ivory that's tucked in there, and that was a gift from one of the other employees at the FBI who donated. They wanted that walrus piece placed on the wreath. And then in the middle, I created a spiral of sweetgrass, and that was to represent all the other tribes or regions and the areas of the land that weren't represented in those four quadrants, those four quadrants. And I did a call out at the American Indian Science and Engineering Society convention. Prior to it, I said, if you could donate sweetgrass, I'm good. This is what I plan on incorporating into the wreath. And at the ACES National Conference, people were here's some sweetgrass. They were like bringing braids of sweetgrass. And sweetgrass is very, is a medicine, especially for the people of the plains of the north. And so to be given sweetgrass and a lot of families said, I'm donating, or a lot of people were saying, I'm donating this in honor of my family member, or please, and so I created the spiral. And the spiral is very important symbol in Native American culture of a lot of tribes. It can symbolize wind. It can symbolize the hurricanes that come through. But then for my Pueblo people, it's the spiral that was our calendar. That's how our summer solstice were marked, how our winter solstice and our summer and spring and fall equinoxes were marked, was on a spiral. And so that meaning of that spiral there was a lot of meaning behind it.
Yeah.
And I was, with the whole process, the FBI said, you can ship it. And I was thinking, oh my God, what if I create this?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm going to be worried about it the whole time, waiting for it to get there. So my dad was like, we're going to pay for you. We're going to send you there. So my best good friend, he lives in DC, and he's like, you're going to stay with me. He says, I'll pick you up. We'll drive you all over the place. And so I created the wreath outside his house, and FBI picked it up. And then it was on display at FBI headquarters for a whole day. And then the following day, on November the 1st, it was laid at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And it was, it was so amazing to see my creation being placed at such an honorable location, and for the men and women who have fought, for our country and who are buried there, and at the tomb where we don't even know who's laying there. It was such an honor, and just I still can't believe I was able to do that. Yeah, it was like
so amazing.
Yeah,
just so heartwarming to know that you honored them.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm going to.
I think we may have to cut. We'll have to edit. This is,
Yep.
wow, I didn't realize how emotional I would be.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's amazing. And it's something that, you know, for generations to come, you know.
And what made me feel real special too was my dad's a veteran. He's a Vietnam vet, and his stories of when he came back from Vietnam, and the crowds that were greeting him were protesters and people throwing rotten fruit and vegetables at the soldiers coming back to U.S. land. And then my dad is like, no, you have to go on, and he sent me on his dime and said, you have to be there. You have to be there to represent all those, who weren't welcome home properly, because this is your way of welcoming them home properly. And so a lot of prayer went into that wreath. And it was just amazing how so many people in my own community, across the US and Alaska, who just jumped to my call and said, and said, here, they donated these things with no, they didn't want recognition. They just wanted prayer, lots of prayer to be put in.
Somehow. Would you mind if I just pause for 1 second? I need to get a tissue.
No, I need to go get a tissue too.
I'm just going to pause the recording. And
Okay.
oh my goodness. Shayai, thank you for sharing that story. I also read too that that on October 31st, that 2019, President Trump issued a proclamation designating November as National Native American Heritage Month. That must feel good to be validated like that.
Every year, the president has done this, and it started actually under Reagan's era, where they actually recognized November as Native American Heritage Month. And but it's really interesting because Native Americans, we didn't get our citizenship until 1924, and we didn't get our voting rights until 1947. And so, it's just within, a generation or two where all these rights and have been afforded to us.
Yeah.
And so when we actually do get recognition, we're in a positive way, where we honor it. Yeah. And so a lot of government and agencies will have events surrounding Native American Heritage Month, and the FBI, that was their way of honoring. And in the past, they said they would have lecturers and speakers come in, and they wanted to do something different, and so they really did something different. And I was so honored to have been a part of that.
It's incredible. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us. And I think everybody got a really good, when it airs, a really good look into you as a person and how passionate and loving you are, and how proud you are to be a Native American. It's incredible. And today I celebrate you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you. It's such an honor. I was so honored to be asked to, represent the less than 1% in our industry. And
we need to change that.
Yes, we do. Yes, there's actually some florists that I have met online. A couple are in Canada, one is in New York City, and but we're small. We're a small group. But hopefully that's one of my goals, is to get more people interested in floristry, and also to see that floristry is an art. It's an art medium. It's not, sure, we use it for gifting for occasions like birthdays and, for thank yous, but there's a lot of creativity that goes into floristry, and that's my whole anticipation is that I can get more people to recognize that floral art is real art.
Yeah, it sure is.
And that is, and it's a medium of itself. It may not live, it may not be around forever. You have a short span of time for it, but it's still art.
Yeah, that's for sure. Thank
Yes.
you so much again for sharing your story. And I just, I love your work. I think it's so beautiful. And yeah, I definitely would encourage more Native Americans to explore floristry. I mean, it's so amazing, and the satisfaction you get from designing a flower arrangement is amazing. Um,
And
and
I think one of the reasons why I wasn't good in like regular art was that I don't have the patience.
yeah,
With floristry, it's almost like immediate gratification, you
yeah,
know, and you create something and it's like wow, and just
yeah.
yeah,
It's incredible too, because like I feel when I design, like the flowers almost talk to you like, okay, this one wants to be placed here because its face is this way, or
yeah.
like that's how I feel when I design it. Almost they tell me where they want to go.
Yay, we're
I've
the
always felt
spirits
that
who
way.
talk to the flowers.
Yeah, right. Well,
No.
thank you again, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, and thank you for connecting and reaching out. Yeah, much love to you. Yes. Mwah. Bye.